Welcome to Bounce, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of product teams, the challenges they face, and the incredible stories of resilience that emerge. I'm Mollie Cox, your co-host, a product designer with a knack for navigating through the storms of creativity.
And I'm your co-host, Claire Flowers, a product manager who's seen it all. The highs, the lows, and everything in between.
Each week we'll bring you tales of product traumas, those moments that test our limits, they push our boundaries, and sometimes bring us to our knees.
We're talking about career flops and follies and those pivotal moments when everything seems to fall apart.
But as we know, the harder you fall, the higher you bounce. We'll explore with our guests their toughest challenges,
The actions they took to overcome them,
and how these experiences have shaped their careers and continue to impact them today.
So join us in this journey of resilience, growth, and bouncing back stronger than ever.
Well, welcome, Laura. We're super excited to have you on the show. I am Mollie Cox, your co-host, here with Claire Flowers, who is also our co-host. Today, we have Laura Baker, who is a global leader in the design industry. She has a background in industrial design and has spent the last few years working with notable design agencies in the UK and, of course, in the US, leading and building those embedded design teams and project work within organizations. She joined Fearless and kicked off their service and business design to oversee UX and user research across the company. And now it appears you're overseeing the agency as a whole. So welcome, Laura. We're super excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So just to go a little more into clarity on that, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and how you ended up in your current role? I mean, you went from industrial design now to leading this global agency. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, of course. I started off, as you say, in industrial design, and it was good, but I didn't love it. And there were kind of moments I was like, I don't know what else I would do. I think design is kind of the place for me, but I don't love this thing that I'm doing. And I ended up thinking about this thing. I was like, I know about this thing called UX, digital. I guess digital. I remember saying to my mum, I guess digital's kind of the future. So maybe I should just go in that direction.
Does your mom know what it is today still? Just out of curiosity. Mine doesn't.
My mum's pretty good. My dad's awful. My dad says the apps and the websites. She does the webs and the apps and the websites.
He's not wrong.
He's not good enough.
Yeah. My mum is better. She can explain. Actually, weirdly enough, she can very well explain UX now. She can explain service design. She actually has a harder time now explaining what I do. And she kind of goes strategic management. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's kind of it's kind of close enough because I can't tell anyone you do UX, and I can't tell anyone that you do service design anymore. I was like, you just kind of look after the people that do it now. I was like, well, just tell them that then. So that's kind of what it is. So I moved into UX. It kind of allowed me to do the bits that I liked in the design process and the bits around UI and the end side of it I could kind of ditch a bit more. I think I went through the kind of e-commerce wireframe monkey kind of rite of passage at that beginning that everyone kind of moves through until I kind of found myself in service design. And then I suppose to answer your question a bit around kind of how I came to be here. So I was working quite happily as a service designer in an account. And all of a sudden one day they said to me, hey, the business unit you're in, we're now putting you in charge of that business unit. So your team, other agency teams, can you just look after this whole thing for us? And I kind of went, well, you're the client, so I can't say no.
Maybe I can.
Maybe. I mean, in my head, I was definitely like, can I do this? But it was one of those kind of say yes and figure it out later kind of things. And that was really the moment that kickstarted, I suppose, where I am today. And then about 3 years ago, had the conversation with Fearless. They had a new account and just wanted oversight predominantly to that account to start with. And then I suppose the rest is history. And as you said, now kind of global design director. And I can always just describe it as kind of my job is the team are happy, the clients are happy, and we're doing good work. And if those three things are true, then my job's going pretty well at the moment.
That's a perfect description, and I hope your mom is listening because that's exactly what she needs to tell people in the future.
Maybe my dad more so.
It's interesting. I love that you're here because, especially from the design leadership side, I get a lot of questions from individuals about how do I transition or pivot into design leadership, because so many times we obviously all start off as the IC. So for you, it was just kind of jump in feet first. But as you've grown and as you lead this role now, I have a big question for you. And I see a lot of your posts and you gravitate towards this in your posts. But what does design leadership mean to you, Laura?
The first word when you say that comes to mind is just privilege. I think I see it now as a real kind of honor and privilege to be in the position that I am. I think obviously, look, some days are better than others, but I think I can wake up every day knowing that I have this leadership role, and that means I have trust. And so I have trust from those above me, our COO, I've got trust from our clients. But I guess in terms of design leadership, most importantly, it means I've got trust from the team. Because without them, I've got no leadership role at all, right? So they've got trust in me, that makes them even first to come and work with us. Trust that I'll be able to kind of support them each day, with the work and the projects they're doing, but then trust that I can help them with their kind of goals and growth and progression, and then trust in the direction we recently done their strategy, that I'm setting for them and for the company, and all the things that kind of come with that. So I think for me, it's really kind of trust and support is the foundational thing with leadership.
So I'm sure it's taken you a little bit to get there, right? From the moment you first started doing design leadership to how you feel about it today. And I know for me, it was very similar, where it was kind of, hey, you're going to do this now. And it's like, cool. All right, let's give this a whirl. Um, but when that happens, imposter syndrome kicks in. That's a very real thing. And I'm sure you may have felt that also, when the client said, lead this. So, how did you navigate that feeling? And I'm sure it kicks in still today. What does imposter syndrome look like for you?
Oh, 100% it kicked in. I remember I've said it to a couple of people. I had this like a thing about 2 days after I got that when they said that to me, and I woke up at about 2 in the morning and I could not sleep. My head was just, and I got the post-it notes out, I got the Sharpie out, and I just spent 20 minutes just ideation by myself. Every concern, every worry, I just spent writing it down, got it on the wall, clustered it, absolute geek, 2 in the morning. And then when
Very UX design.
so UX, and I went, okay, themes. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm worried about. Okay, I can go back to sleep now. And just that getting it out my head and being able to kind of see it and go, okay, I'm worried about this thing. I can make a plan around it later. And I think that for me has always been the crux of what I found whenever I've come up against something, because a lot of the time I think the big kind of challenges feel like massive, massive challenges. And sometimes they really are. But the best thing that I found I can do is A, break them down, and B, say, okay, once I've broken this down, how much of this is actually in my control? And let me focus on what's actually in my control. Because the stuff that's not in my control, there's actually three things. There's the things in my direct control, there's stuff I can influence, and then there's stuff that, like, there's just no chance. And if I can focus on the main things that I can focus on, then what I find is it's kind of one step after the other, and as I can see the next step forward and the next step forward, and then I can find the right support around me to kind of get through it in a way. And I say that like I can deal with it. I mean, there's still every day that there are new things that come along. I go, well, here's the next thing, here's the next thing. And I think that's only natural. And I don't think, I mean, you said you felt it yourself. I don't think you ever stop. I know there are people out there that will say, oh, I don't really get it. And maybe they don't. But I think for a lot of people, it's just this continuing thing, because every growth point, every step up, there's this new level of expectation, this new realm of responsibilities that you've now got to kind of spread yourself to cover, and it's always new ground. And actually, if you do your job, once you go up a level, you're not doing the things that you were doing before. So it's a whole new thing for you to get your head around. So it's absolutely massive. And I'd love to say that I'm getting better at it. I definitely haven't got it nailed down. But that's just where the insecurity comes from.
Yeah, and that insecurity is really just the lizard brain. And you know, we talk to folks who are in IC roles and in leadership roles, and a lot of, you know, speaking to leaders, it's really your ability to overcome the self-doubt and let I can do this overcome that I can't do this. And that's like really just a state of mind and has nothing to do with really your capabilities of doing it, but being able to break things down and have these methods to like see through a problem is really a common theme that I've seen talking to people in leadership positions for sure.
Well, I think we have to remember to some extent too that when we feel that imposter syndrome, we when we get nervous, we care, right? So we care about what's upcoming, but also it means we don't necessarily we're about to be challenged. We're about to be pushed. Have you guys seen that lobster video about how lobsters they outgrow their shell, and they get anxious, and then they'll sit and they outgrow their shell, and then they explode out of it and they're ready for the next evolution. So a lot of people look at imposter syndrome as being a lobster. You've outgrown your shell and you're ready to form a new one, right? I'll link it.
Yeah, I like that.
I'll link the video in the show notes for this episode, but definitely check it out. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that, you know, I love what you're saying, Laura, is just, you know, work it out, focus on what you can, but also know it's a challenge in front of you and you will get through it. I mean, Claire, I can imagine even new features that you kick off. You may feel imposter syndrome even with a new feature. It doesn't have to allude to a new role. It doesn't have to allude to transitioning jobs, but it's always when something big is in front of us, we start to feel that way. And
yeah, it's seeing with a new feature, it's seeing like the mountain of tasks, the mountain of obstacles that you have to overcome. And there's a decision. Either you're going to start making steps forward or you're going to sit in it. And I think that your ability to just put that one foot in front of the other and break things down is really a key moment in whenever you're taking on anything big, and being able to just like be self-assurance. Molly, you're very self-assured.
That's what Gallup Strength Finder said. So,
but I think you're totally right. I mean, it's that kind of mindset, and then to your point, it's that kind of knowledge that you're there because someone else believes in you as well. And I think you've got to try and remember that, like, if people didn't think you can do it, you wouldn't have been given that opportunity in the first place. So I say that like I'm like, yeah, I've got that. No, I have to constantly remind myself that myself. And I think my mind is one of my biggest challenges in terms of like what I actually have. I say, well, my mind and like literally my face is one of my biggest challenges that I've got to kind of deal with, because I'm very aware of it regularly, and something I never thought about as an IC, never crossed my mind. I mean, I kind of recognized that I looked young, just out and about, when my parents used to play their favorite game of how old do you think she is, and I was like, can we please not do this? Yeah,
stop.
But yeah, then suddenly I found myself in a leadership position, and this kind of massive insecurity that I never even knew that I had started to play a role. And it was kind of like joining new client calls, going to meetings, and my first thought was always like, shit, what the hell are they going to think when I turn up? They're not going to be expecting me to turn up. Or it's walking into design leadership events and knowing in the back of my head that I don't really fit in this room compared to everyone else. And it always comes to a head for me when you go to things where there's kind of like different levels and different seniorities, and you go to these meetups and people always start the chat with kind of like, oh, so like what type of designer are you, or kind of whatever that question is. And I kind of awkwardly say, well, I used to do UX and service design, but now I do this. And they're like, you can just see the kind of momentary surprise and kind of like puzzle in their face as they kind of like reassess you. And I totally get it. I am extremely, like, I'm young for the position that I'm in, and I look even younger. Like, I still get ID'd for paracetamol sometimes. I guess for you that's like aspirin.
Lucky.
Well, you have to be 16. So I mean, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
Anytime my ID comes out here, I'm like, oh, thank you. That's so
I
kind.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's normally when I'm not wearing any makeup, but still, that's half my age. So I'm a bit like,
Yeah.
yeah. And like, so I don't blame anyone for it. And I appreciate that it majority of the time never comes from a place of bad intent or even from consciousness, but it's just all of those little moments that sort of reinforce that insecurity in me. So it's just one of those things that I'm just constantly trying to get better at kind of dealing with and finding out ways to kind of crack it and work on my own confidence.
Having being a one of the on a previous episode, I loved this analogy. We were talking to a design leader, and he said, my primary role is to hold the shit umbrella. And I had never heard that before, and I just thought it was incredible. And what he meant was, guarding your team and just like taking all the shit from all the things and just providing his team with focus so that he just holds the shit umbrella. How do you, leading a team, do you find opportunities to recognize when a teammate is maybe feeling insecure, and how do you like take your experience and coach them through that?
It's a really great question. I think, well, I would hope that I have like enough vulnerability with the team that I've spoken to them about my challenges, and I'm very kind of hope that they would be. I've got one guy that's got very like a great tell for when he's stressed because his hair sticks up on end because he sits doing this. So that's always really helpful to know. But I remember even like we came out of a workshop at the start of the year with one of my designers, and they turned around to me at the end and said I felt really out of my depth in that. And we had like a really good kind of conversation about it. And I think it's just those little moments where they take time to build up. I think it's partly me and the way that I have to kind of show my vulnerability, and not just vulnerability, but just transparency to say, hey, look, whether it's something to do with the clients, whether it's something to do with the work, whether it's something personal, whether it's to do with the company, I'm going to tell you everything that I can tell you. And I hope that you can tell me everything that you feel like you want to tell me, and we'll work through it together in a no judgment way, and we'll just have a kind of conversation about it. But I think it's one of those things that everyone strives for, and it's difficult to build because it takes time. When you have trust, you have to give the trust before you can get the trust, and it's just this kind of constant thing of, it's in some ways an uphill battle because it's so hard to get and very easy to break. So it's such something that you think consciously always have to be aware of and thinking about.
Yeah, I love that example because it's a testament to what you said earlier, that, to you, being a design leader is establishing trust, whether that's up or down. You have to have trust amongst not only your employees, but the people above you as well. But the fact that he could come to you and say that, the designer could come and say, hey, I felt out of my depth. That's a true testament to you and how vulnerable you are to your own people, because a lot of times individuals won't come to somebody and say that out of fear, right? If they don't feel that's a safe environment. I often refer to what I like to say is radical softness. As a leader, really leading with vulnerability, leading with that transparency to establish that trust. But what you said, we try to tell as much as we can, but we also have to hold the shit umbrella and protect from the things that you absolutely don't need to hear.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm almost, just to be totally transparent, I'm not almost, I'm completely jealous of that, that type of relationship. I think because like culturally within design teams, it seems to me like that this type of approach is a lot more common, a lot more accepted in product management. At least in my experience, that hasn't been the case. It's like, as a product manager, you're expected to be extremely confident, especially as a female. And I found that I have to be very strategic in ways that I show vulnerability, because I'm essentially judged on my confidence in solutions. And if you like show a little, like any moment of vulnerability, then your credibility can just take a downward spiral. So, and I'm not saying that's true for all product teams, but I think that the culture within product managers, product management, and just what the role really requires, a lot of times we don't get the luxury of being able to be totally candid and vulnerable, because it kind of can blow up in your face, unfortunately. But
Well, think about just the roles themselves too, though. As designers, I mean, one of the primary tenets of what we do is empathy, right? Like we're the human side, Claire. You're just the business
In theory,
side.
anyway.
So stick to your business, be strategic, and stop bitching. Just kidding.
What I'm hearing you say, Mollie, is suck it up.
And this is where the designer empathy
basically
breaks.
It came out. My bad. But you've actually traipsed into product management, Claire. Which
great. I opened the door.
You opened the door to yourself and you did this. So I actually want to ask Laura this question. We've had some good back and forth about this online to some extent. But so Laura, how do you view the relationship between product management and design?
It's going to sound really weird coming from an only child, but I kind of see it as this like weird sibling relationship. Like even just the like back and forth, this like weird like tension and love and hate that seems to be there. You almost have this like weird rivalry when you're kind of like really good friends 1 minute in one environment and then enemies the next. And I think it's really tricky, because I think a lot of when we talk about kind of the tension, it comes down to like a lot of overlap and sort of like clarity around roles. And it feels like in some ways in the digital space, at least, we have sort of grown and developed really quickly, and almost have these like forced artificial maybe kind of distinctions and structures in roles. Whereas if I kind of lean back on my industrial design days, granted it was a while ago, or even things like architecture, in terms of people I've spoken to since, like my own experience, it was that kind of end-to-end process. And quite frankly, why I moved away from it is it was one job, and this kind of split in the digital work, I think, that it exists that isn't in other places. There's a lot of the tension, the frustration, and the negative energy of like, well, who's doing what? That's my thing to do. No, it's my thing to do. And you've got a lot of overlap in skill sets and a lot of really good people on both sides, which is where a good culture also becomes incredibly important. And I think also where scale becomes incredibly important, because obviously in org size and a smaller, it's a lot easier to kind of get things done, and you don't have all of these kind of like crazy silos. But yeah, I just think sometimes if it was all called one thing, and we didn't have product and design, and maybe we were just we had one name, but we were specialists of different things within that name, I do wonder whether that would give a bit of kind of more of a shared baseline and a shared foundation, and remove some of that tension in there.
I actually love that. I've never thought about it in a title format, because sometimes I feel where product managers gravitate towards, Claire, you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes they gravitate towards the manager side of the title as opposed to the product side of the title. And which is interesting, because as designers, we sometimes gravitate towards the product side of the title, trying to be the strategic side and the strategic ones. But yeah, what would happen if we were all just called, I don't know. I don't even know what that title looks like, but like
person.
We're going to make it up. I'm going to figure it out. Yeah.
We'll call you
but product person one, product person two.
Perfect.
We haven't got
enough
job titles at the moment, so we might as well make another one just to kind of like confuse things even more.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, Laura, is we're just introducing a whole new spectrum of titles, right?
So to reduce the complexity, I'm adding more complexity to this.
Excellent. LinkedIn is going to love this.
Yeah, but I think to come back in terms of what you were saying before as well, like this idea of like design empathy or whatever. I think sometimes there could be a bit more kind of people that are a bit more humble and a bit more self-aware and a bit more empathetic and open to kind of learning about each other and collaborating and looking at how we improve things, how we have shared vocabulary and commonalities. Because yeah, we talk so much about empathy for users or whatever, but where's the empathy for our peers, our colleagues, our stakeholders? So it's kind of this idea of you need to leave your ego at the door and just figure out, okay, well, where are you at? What is the problem that we're trying to solve right now? Let's all gather around the same problem. What is the one outcome that we're looking for? What does the organization need? And let's kind of go in around that, because I think often we just want to have impact as designers, which is why we get into it in the first place. But this impact drives us to the point where we're fighting against things, and we're fighting against products, and we're fighting against tech. And a lot of the times these are, well, particularly on the tech side, they've got like 10 years on us in these organizations. They're a lot more established. So to say I'm going to get design to the same level as tech, like in some ways, okay, you might be somehow manage to do that, but that is not going to be an easy job. So you actually have to take a step back and go, is this the right thing to do? Is it an achievable thing? And maybe it's not about getting there, it's just getting to a certain point and finding value rather than actually fighting a losing battle and figuring out what you need to kind of what you hold on to and what you let go in order to get what you need and where you need to be.
How do you feel, in terms of just all the things that you just said, how do you feel bringing that together about ensuring designers aren't just seen as tactical executors, right? And because I know do you have product managers in your...
No. So we work
with
clients, whatever, but we're pure design within Fearless.
So, I mean, your designers don't even have to deal with the headache of product management. That was for Claire.
Dig number 2.
No, sorry. Yeah, we need a
I
tally
can take
counter
it. I can
in the
take
corner.
it.
Yeah. But so with no product, what does that look like in your org with no product managers, period? How are the designers kind of managing? They're doing tactical strategy at the same time. I don't know. What does that look like?
So it's a very conscious choice. So we don't have product, we don't have delivery managers, and it's been a conversation with people, just to be really transparent, that have been in the agency previously that have said like, oh, we need delivery people. And sorry, Claire, mine's always been like, well, why? What value? So what value are they? What do you want them to be doing that they're not? Because my view is, I mean, look, we don't very rarely work within us as kind of a bubble. We're working with clients, and therefore the team all work with product people and delivery people, engineers, but they're working with people that are on the client side rather than that within Fearless in particular. But my view has always been, and it has been born out of the fact that I haven't had very good relationships with delivery people and been able to see the value in what they've brought. But I also think that it disempowers designers to some degree if I then stick a delivery person on top of them. If I say, I'm going to give you someone that's going to manage your deadlines for you, that's going to go and have the conversations when things get a bit tricky. No, I'd rather have my designers do that. I'd like to empower them to be able to manage their own work, to say, hey, there's a problem over there. Okay, go speak to the stakeholder. Tell them if you need any support, I'm here. That's what I'm here for. But actually, for their own growth, for their own benefit, I don't need someone else to swoop in and take that away from them. And that's the way that we've worked to date. And we've seen results with that.
Do you feel that's much more of an agency model, that tech companies can get away with that as well? Like where does the line begin and end between agency and client side?
Yeah, I definitely think it's an agency thing. I remember I had a discussion with someone a while ago. I think it was when we were actually having the last debate of, do we have delivery people, do we not have delivery people? And I said to someone who was at kind of they were very large kind of consultancy agency, and I said, you've got delivery people, do you see the value in them? And the response I got was, sometimes if we're in a project that's kind of in the delivery side of it, so it's in development, the delivery person's really good because they go with the engineers and they can track the speed and the velocity and they make sense. When we're doing design work, when we're in discovery or anything, they've been pretty useless, to be honest, because they don't feel like they've got a role while we're doing it. And that was that one person's view. But I think that's where this idea of actually figuring out roles and responsibilities, clarity, and what you kind of hold on to. I remember having a really good chat a while ago with the great SVP at bank in the US. And he was talking about scaling design mindsets, and it really stuck with me. And it was kind of like this idea of, you want design to be widespread and accepted, you almost have to make it a part of everyone's world rather than holding on to it yourself. So it means kind of letting go of the reins slightly and sort of drumming the same message over and over again until others start to repeat the same thing. Because I think as design, you might be ultimately accountable or the key driver to be kind of the advocate for the user, but you can't be the only one that cares. And if other people care, your job's going to be a hell of a lot easier if that kind of mindset extends. So I think with this kind of product and design thing, typically design see themselves as the people that advocate for the user when no one else is or no one else was doing that. And then as product has kind of come in, I guess to your point, this sort of like management side of things, but also so they're not just managing the projects or driving the requirements, but they're actually looking at scope and strategy and journeys. And there's a clash because there's a lot of designers going, well, we're doing that. But actually, if everyone thinks about the user and feels accountable for it, then that's awesome. You just need that sort of empathy and understanding of roles and responsibilities to actually figure it out. So I don't necessarily know if there's a hard divide that we can say this is where it splits, or to your point, if it's more agency or in-house, if it's more startup or blue chip large scale organization. I think there's probably a balance that needs to be found where your culture is and where your maturity is at the time, but it will all come through kind of good communication at the end of the day.
So what does this bubble up for you, Claire? Like,
I completely agree. I think that my view on working in tandem with design is that it's very important from the jump of the project for the PM and the product designer to look at each other as partners in this project. Like you're both carrying the baton. You both have different skill sets, and you should early in understanding which each of you bring to the role, set some boundaries and expectations over like how you're going to work together and really start understanding the stresses that each of you have together. So from a product manager's perspective, this isn't every organization, but a lot of times I like to say that we're the fall guy or fall woman. if anything really goes wrong, it's like, okay, well, the PM's on the chopping block. So that creates a whole other dynamic that the PM has to deal with, unfortunately. Now, that's not every organization, but I think that where I've seen like the relationship really work together is when both parties are understanding where the other one is coming from and can have healthy arguments and challenge each other. And then at the end of the day, understand one team, one dream, and come together, reach across the aisle, if you will.
Should I play Celine Dion in this moment, Claire?
Yes, please. Cue the music.
Okay, cue the music.
Yeah.
No. Also, I wanted to say this. This is leading me to we're talking about how design kind of traverses into other areas. Do we actually need product designers? No, I'm just kidding. Or product managers, but I won't go that far, Claire.
It's okay.
But it actually brings to mind for me how our landscape is continually changing, right? And actually, Laura, you were on an episode of Beyond UX with Jeremy not too long ago. Shout out to Jeremy. But you two were talking about kind of defining yourself and who you are and figuring out who you are in design. Along that tandem, how do you see design evolving in the next few years? how will design evolve, and what does a designer look like in the upcoming time?
Big, interesting question. I guess most people's thoughts are, well, we're not going to have a job because AI is going to just take over everything. So it might. There we go. You don't need product designers. You don't need designers anymore because the product people have just got
And
like ChatGPT and they're going to spit out all the design
yep.
work. I don't know. I don't think it's definitely going to impact. I don't think it's going to have that much influence. Yeah, I think it in theory, if it's done well, it will create efficiencies. There might be like that. There could be chances where it will reduce the number of jobs around. I was having an interesting conversation with someone recently around actually it might be that junior roles or more junior roles are the ones that really get impacted more because what people talk about is AI is kind of picking up the slack. It's doing kind of the more non-root, well, it's going to be root, whatever. It's doing the more menial work, which is typically what juniors kind of come in and help to train themselves up on. But the interesting thing for that, me, is if the junior roles aren't there, what happens to the latter generations? Like, how do you develop people?
How do
What
you
happens to
evolve?
them?
How do
Yeah,
you get
exactly. How do you
seniors?
get seniors?
Yeah.
What does our next level of leadership look like? So I think that's going to be an interesting thing going forward if this AI thing. But I think there's always AI is definitely bigger than anything that we've necessarily had for a while. I mean, everyone thought blockchain was going to be the next big thing, and I can't remember how many conversations I tuned out of when people were talking about that. And yeah, it did. I don't think it materialized in the extent that people thought it was going to. I think AI is going to be more so than that. But at the same time, I think people will have evolved. They'll find new ways of doing things. And it's just going to be a matter of going, okay, well, how do we create efficiencies? Because yes, someone can go in and create an app from scratch on some sort of AI, but it's not going to, it's the same way for me that you can go to like a Wix template builder or one of those kind of Squarespace things, and you can make yourself a website from kind of a relatively generic template if that's what you want to do. That to me is kind of what AI is going to give you. It's not going to give you that kind of real custom thing that you'd go to if you got a real kind of like designer agency or whatever working on it. So I think there's still a space for it. I think it might force people to be a bit more creative. It might put them into particular niches, but I don't think it's going to take anything away for a while.
I agree with the AI. I think, to me, the most prolific thing that we've seen out, blockchain, like you said, kind of came and went was iPhone in 2007, right? So that changed the landscape, right? All of a sudden we had mobile apps, so we never had mobile apps before. And I feel, to me personally, AI is going to be very similar in vein to that. But I'm also at the point where I'm really tired of hearing about it. Like, every company is coming out with Gen AI. Every company is coming out of all of these things. And it's just feels like it's kind of in your face. So I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I just kind of ignored it now and go about my day. And I do the things I do. And I mean, I use AI on a very regular basis. I'm using ChatGPT. I'm using different tools now that I didn't use previously, but that they're just that to me. They're tools. And I just still don't see, and I'm obviously could be very, very wrong. I just don't see a day where it could feasibly replace a human being when it
No,
comes
I
to design.
completely agree with that. And I think it's also, you've got to think, yeah, design is about output, but actually, if you think about the kind of problem solving, I mean, how many times, I said to someone, how many times has a client come to us and gone, this is what we want, and we've gone, is that really what you want? Are you sure? Like, I mean, maybe down the line it's going to challenge briefs, but a lot of the time it's just going to execute the briefs. And all of these things about, like, do you really know your users? And like, to be fair, they might go to AI because they hate being asked, being like, no, you don't really know that. No, like, we just cut the annoying questions out from all the designers that we usually get. But I think in terms of AI, I agree. It's one of those things where you're just like, let's just see what happens. Let's not freak out about it yet. We do what we do as designers. We adapt. We'll see how things come. But I'm just trying to think if there's anything more broad to answer your question in terms of how, I mean, the market itself is going to probably change how designers are acting. I do hope that there is more of a gap for more kind of strategic work from design, and it goes more from kind of strategic partners more so than tactical execution. And I think in a way that, sorry, I'm going back to it, but if AI does come to the forefront, then actually it's going to push design to either go, it's going to just wipe us out, or it's going to push us into the direction that we actually want to be going, which is the more strategic partner side, because the tactical execution is taken potentially by something else.
It's interesting because we have so many people who want to be that strategic partner too. Because PMMs, like they want to do the strategy. We have PMs. Claire, how do you think AI, for product managers and other product individuals who are listening right now, how do you think AI is going to shape product management to some extent?
I think that, I mean, it's an incredible tool. I think that as far as the job function itself, it's already, I mean, in my day to day, I have this note taker called Fathom. Plug for that product because it's amazing.
Share a discount code.
It joins all my calls. Yeah, I actually am on the refer. I'm a referrer.
Okay.
I haven't figured out how to really capitalize on it, because then it feels like I'm a salesperson and I'm starting to feel a little bit icky. I just love the product. Fathom, it's awesome. Check it out. It joins. I mean, there's lots of note taking apps out there, right? This one joins all of your meetings, synthesizes the notes, automatically emails it to the entire team. And the premium version of the key takeaways and the notes from the meeting are fantastic. So I think as AI stands right now for the role of product management, I mean, that has just exponentially helped drive alignment. Like record keeping, we have meetings all the time. What did we say in that meeting? Or what did we make about this extremely weird, detailed decision? Oh, here it is. It's here in the notes. I was, before this particular tool, I was admittedly really, in a meeting, I really can't be paying attention and being engaged and also taking notes. I can't. I wish I could. I've just never been able to do it. And so, sorry, I'll get back to your question. I think that
Claire's lost in Fathom. So
such a good product.
We need to seek out sponsorship.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, I think that a colleague of mine has created this tool that hooks into AI that generates product briefs based on user needs, and it's fantastic. I mean, I think as a utility, AI can very much support the role in product management, but I still think that it can't, as it stands today, won't ever replace having that. I mean, a fall person. AI is never going to be the fall guy, so you got to have a fall guy or fall woman.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point. I think right now, and it is a testament to even what we're saying about design, is AI is a great helper right now. But in terms of a replacement, I think we can calm the panic just a little bit, in my opinion. So, Laura, I'm with you. I don't think design's going anywhere anytime soon. We're just finding new ways to work and emerging new.
And I always say to people, get into management for the right reasons. So I'm really not pushing this in the right way right now, but I don't think it's going to take anyone's management. Like, it's not going to start like giving people personal one-to-ones or giving them growth. I mean, maybe I suppose you could put, I don't know, I don't use it enough to know if you could put a growth plan into ChatGPT, but I mean, I can't see line management going anywhere for the time being. So that's probably pretty safe as well.
Well, I don't even want to write reviews with ChatGPT, right? Like, it dehumanizes everything. And so you couldn't be managed by AI. I don't know. Laura, we're going to look back on this episode 20 years from now and laugh at how dumb and silly
it's going to be like one of those things where people are going like, oh, COVID, it'll be over like within a week or two. And then you look back on it and you're like, oh, yeah, little did you know.
Oh, wait. I remember I lived when SMS, right? I lived in New York City when texting started to become big, and my friend had just come back from Japan and was trying to explain to me text messaging. I think this is like 2002 maybe. And I was like, so wait, you send a message, why? And she's like, well, what if you're running late and you just need to message somebody real quick? You just shoot them a message. I'm like, why would you not call them? Like,
now I'm like, don't call me.
Don't call me. Don't Absolutely call never. Me. I just couldn't work it out in my brain how this would possibly take off. And now my life revolves around texting. Absolutely. So it's just, so funny how that emerging technology comes, but I'll never forget that. Just she was dumbfounded at how much of an idiot I was about not understanding SMS messaging. So kind of spinning back around just a little bit, I want to go back into that design leadership side. You segued us there, so I'm going to go back there. But I do often have a lot of designers come to me. It's something that comes up in mentorship. It's something that comes up in coaching quite often, is making that transition into design leadership. For some of us, it was just, getting thrown into the flames. For others, it is a very conscious decision to transition. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to move in to more the leadership side of things, and what should they maybe be focusing on as an IC that they haven't thought about previously?
I think in terms of advice, I'd say often it should be, you could argue that it should be a step, but it's probably going to feel more like a leap. And that's really fine, because it's what a lot of people feel when you go into it. So you shouldn't expect to think that you're going to know it all, and you need to be okay with admitting that you don't, and you're not going to get it right first time. There isn't one way of doing it. You kind of just need to experiment and find your way. And I think if you asked any leader, like, hey, when did you get it right? Was it the first, the second, the third time? They'll vote, I don't think I've got it. Like, hopefully the good ones will probably say to you, I still haven't got it right, because every team, every organization, they're all going to need something a little bit different. And every time you've got to kind of repivot. You might have like 90% of the way that you do things, but then you need to find your kind of like 10% that works with who it is. So it's really this kind of iterate, figure out, listen, and then I'd say kind of figure out who your first team really is and use them. Don't spend all your time looking down. It was a mistake that I think I made initially, and I see it with a lot of people that I speak to now, is I think a lot of the time you learn from those that came before you, whether it's the good or the bad, and what you learn is what you see, and what you see is them doing the down work, and you don't see them doing the up and the out. And I kind of learned the hard way that I was spending too much time doing the down work. And I think also it might be the agency side. I think typically in agency you have more remits to look down on team and work, and when you're in-house you need to be spending a lot more time going up and out. So I'd say that would be my advice. And then in terms of the second half of your question, I think was around like, what could you be doing? Build relationships, get used to like really building relationships, speaking to people, finding out what their challenges are, how you can support them. I mean, that's only going to be of benefit to you. I also think if you really want to go for it, speak to whoever your manager or leader is, because you're going to need their help. They will be the ones that will know where the opportunities are for you to get involved with certain things. And if you've got a good leader, what should hopefully happen is you can say, these are the things that I kind of want to do. And a lot of the time what restricts people is capacity. Like, if I'm heads down doing this project, how can I then take on X, Y, and Z to test out management or do all of these other things without kind of burning myself out? So ultimately, I think what you would ideally have is someone that can go, okay, you want to try all of these things. That's going to be like 20% of your time. Therefore, I need to work out with you how we free up 20% of your time. Do I take it? Do we delegate it out to someone else? But actually give you the time to really explore and figure out what you want to be doing and get a taste for if it's the right thing for you. That's assuming you're not just chucked in head first, in which case you have to just figure it out as you go along.
I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to remember you're never going to get it right. Today I still never get it right. There are things where as a leader it's like I should have seen that coming, or I failed miserably in that, helping an individual in a certain way. But I think that's, to me, one of the hardest things about leadership is there's really no handbook for it, because different scenarios come up on a regular basis, and you just have to know
No.
You're not always going to be right.
I wish there was a
100% of the time.
playbook, but
So
no.
there's yes.
I mean, people will try and
agreed.
sell
There's
you
not.
one, but I don't think there really is one.
I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. Not like an IC type of playbook. On that note, Laura, is there anything that we haven't asked you today that you are super passionate about that everyone else should know?
At the end of like a user interview, is there anything that we haven't covered yet? You're such
What
a
have we not covered
Um,
today? That's dang it. Dang it. I
Showed
should have
your
let Claire
cards.
take us out.
There's
All right.
there's a lot. I think it's just a matter of, I think if it's leadership you're going after, I think just make sure, to my point earlier, I say do it for the right reasons. There's a lot of great people out there, but we also need a lot of great ICs out there. And whatever level, whether you're doing it from an IC to a manager, whether you're going from a manager to an exec, everything is a big leap up, and everything is a step change, and everything is a new focus and new skill sets and new mindsets. It's almost like just going into a completely different role. It's not necessarily an up, but it can also be quite a big out. And there's a big learning curve. So I think the best ones are the ones that do it for the right reasons. And if it's not for you, then hopefully you're in a place where there is a track that does suit you. But really make sure that it is being done for the right reasons, because it's detrimental for you. Otherwise, it's detrimental for the people around you, and it just leads to a lot of churn and unhappiness, I'd say.
On that, I think that is some of the most brilliant advice on leadership I've heard. Honestly, do it for the right reasons. On that note, Laura, very appreciative of you being here today. Phenomenal conversation, and yeah, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you for having
Laura.
me.
I appreciate you guys sparring with me a little bit. You know, PMs like to spar.
I'll always give that to you, Claire.
Good. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, thank you both so much. It's been so much fun and really great questions. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you'd like to connect with us, check out our website at bouncepodcast.com.